Ancient Relics is Stellaris' latest expansion, which focuses on, as the name says, ancient relics and discovery. It focuses on what Stellaris does best, exploration and discovery, by increasing the depth of Stellaris' world building with 2 new precursors and dig sites to discover. The new precursors are a great addition that helps to round out the lineup of precursors with the new hive mind and psionic precursors, which were sorely missing from the previous lineup. The stories are well designed, and while I won't spoil the details on them, I do like them quite a bit. They've also done a patch over on the other precursors in the free patch, which helps kind of round them out a bit, but overall the rewards of the new precursors are pretty fun and really add to the universe to give something new and fresh to play through. Excavations are the headline feature of this expansion. They work sort of like anomalies, but with more advanced storylines and a dedicated progression mechanic. Unlike anomalies, which you generally study and then forget about, or you kind of follow up here and there in different locations, excavations take place in a singular location, and you basically get a ton of different consistent dialogue and event options through them. You basically find one, you assign a scientist to it, and it works sort of like a siege mechanic from previous Paradox games. And what I mean by that is it uses the random chance of the siege mechanic from Europa Universalis or Crusader Kings. So there's sort of a random chance to eventually break through the defenders and weaken them. And it's the same thing with this. You assign a scientist to it, there's a random chance that just kind of continually goes until eventually it breaks through. This can be a little frustrating though, because sometimes it can take an eternity to break these down. I did have 2 events in particular that just took a super dang long time just to get one step to progress. But for the most part, it wasn't really that bad. Some of the events are quite short, while others can go on for a fairly long time with multiple steps. The rewards are pretty fun, I have to say, but some can win or lose a playthrough. I won't say which, but one in particular gives you a frickin' Titan pretty early in the game that can be obtained. So if you get it, you can just steamroll everybody, which is a bit ridiculous. But I do love how the rewards actually feel like they make you feel like you're uncovering grand relics of a lost, begone civilization. One of the things I've always complained about and disliked about previous events in Stellaris is that it feels a lot of times like the rewards are a little underwhelming, but these are definitely nothing but incredible for the most part. There's a ton that are just super cool and very powerful, and it really feels like you're uncovering something massive. And they feel like they can change and influence playthroughs, which is fun because it adds a little bit more replayability to it. But there's also some RNG to it. For example, there was one that I uncovered that basically caused a giant dragon to come over my planet, and the only way I could destroy it was going to the late game and getting like a 20 or 30k fleet to blow it up, which is ridiculous because this event happened pretty dang early in the game in the first couple decades, and I was just stuck with this dragon that effectively blockaded the entire system from being flown over because it would just annihilate anything that came in its way. So that's a little frustrating. It's something I wish that the balancing of it was a little bit maybe better, because it just can be really frustrating if you just stumble upon that one dragon that just completely screws the system. It doesn't help that the excavations must also be within your own borders, which can really screw over tall empires, because if you can't rush out and claim those really fast, you might just get an AI or an opponent in multiplayer who gets a really good one that just completely rolls you over, which is frustrating. Overall though, I like the excavation mechanic. I'm excited to see where modders and Paradox take the new mechanic in the future with different mods or expansions. I think this is a mechanic that actually can add quite a bit to the game with new opportunities and new events to have. There's also relics, which are both a paid and free feature. Basically, relics can be obtained by completing various events. Some are fairly basic, while others are quite powerful. They also retroactively added some to previous events, such as the Khan's Throne for defeating the Great Khan, which gives a passive effect of negative 20% claim cost and an active effect that grants ship weapons damage. There's tons of things like this for other previous events, but also new ones that are in the Ancient Relics expansion. I think they're pretty fun because they add sort of game-changing effects, and it really truly adds to that feeling I mentioned earlier that you're uncovering massive relics. Music has always been great in Stellaris, and Ancient Relics I think has some of the best music so far from Stellaris. It's really good compared to a lot of their DLC expansions, especially compared to the last 3 expansions, Apocalypse, Distant Stars, and Megacorps. I do think this one is pretty dang good. I've been playing a couple of the tracks in the background, and so I'd say that they're pretty top quality. Overall, I enjoyed Ancient Relics a lot. It's on the better side of Stellaris expansions. It will appeal most to players who like the lore, story, and exploration aspects of Stellaris. There's no new civic types or playstyles at all, which is a little bit of disappointment because they always seem to be usually added in Stellaris expansions, so it doesn't really help to refresh the playstyle aspect. But I do think that this expansion adds a lot to really refresh playstyles to make them a little more fun, kind of like Distant Stars did by just adding new events and things to do. So if you're just looking for new story and exploration content, then I think Ancient Relics has you covered. The music is awesome, and it feels like you're truly uncovering new interesting surprises with the relics and the excavation system. There's a lot of pretty fun things to find. The only complaints I really have is that It's a bit unbalanced, like I mentioned earlier. You can just uncover some stupid ones that just completely break a playthrough or make you super strong or super weak because an AI gets them, or just screw over a planet like I mentioned with the dragon earlier. It can lead to some frustrating endings to playthroughs, and I also wish that there was maybe some more civic types or something to help spice up the gameplay of Empires, because really all this does is just adds more story content, which isn't a bad thing. The two new precursors are pretty fun too, so overall it's a pretty fun expansion. I'd recommend it. I'd say it's on one of the better ones of Stellaris.